Hi, my name is Miko, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my final video essay in Intro to Soc, and I'm going to be talking about sociological imagination, socialization, cognitive empathy, and cultural humility. So let's get started. I'm going to start off in sociological imagination, and so our basic textbook in class definition is the awareness of the relationship between a person's behavior and experience and the wider culture that shapes a person's choices and perceptions. So ultimately, this is the way we perceive people based on the experiences that we have had. Kind of one way that I saw sociological imagination in my life before I took this class was in the medical field. I worked as a beach lifeguard in the summer, and a lot of calls that I went on were overdoses. And as I went on these medical calls, I wondered why these people were so addicted to drugs and why these people had the lack of willpower to stop taking drugs, because drugs are just so harmful for your body, and I don't know why someone would do that to harm their life and to harm their body. And I just was confused. But after sociological imagination, I was able to think about all the things that could be contributing to this cause and to the addiction, rather than just looking at them and being like, why are you choosing this life? And some of these causes include economic stress and social alienation. And how my sociological imagination has grown. Before, I would just think of the first idea that would come into my head, if I didn't have that much interest to it, or if it didn't really apply to my life. I would just come up with the first judgmental answer and kind of go with that. Now I take into account, after taking this class, I take into account all the things that could be influencing this situation, instead of taking the first judgmental answer or idea that comes to my mind when I see something. One of the course materials that has really helped me grow was the lecture about deviance, specifically about how we talked about conflict theorists pointing out inequalities. I had never really gone in depth about crime rates or crime at all in general, because in certain cities there isn't much crime that has been reported or crime that is seen. It also didn't really apply to me because I don't really see much crime in my neighborhood, or so that it just doesn't go noticed. So then we started talking about the power elite theory, which was really an eye-opener to me, because I never really thought about this and how people in power can determine what crime is. That is so true, I feel like. A lot of people in power determine what they can do and what crime is, and yeah, it kind of makes sense. We also talked about how crime rates is higher in inner cities, and some factors that influence this is because that when compared to the suburbs, inner cities have more surveillance, I feel like, because a lot of inner cities are very dense and compact with people and shops and cars and all of these things that could contribute to crime rates. And so it just provides, in the suburbs, there's probably crime that goes unnoticed because there's either no surveillance, or there's people that are very wealthy that would stop the crime or just let the crime slide under the table. And another factor is that there's more opportunity compared to the suburbs, because of how dense it is. So next slide, we talk about socialization. So the definition of socialization is the process through which people are taught to be proficient members of a society. I like to think of it as like the experiences we go through that teach us our societal norms and what's right from wrong, and often that includes who we surround ourselves with and the environment we immerse ourselves with. Also, as well as our parents. Our parents teach us a lot about what is right from wrong. Either sometimes they're beneficial and sometimes they're not, and they kind of send you in the wrong path. One of the biggest socialization agents that I see in my generation is technology. Technology is used for everything. I see it everywhere, and I think that it's the biggest agent that everyone uses throughout all generations. Some older generations probably less, but compared to when I was in the younger generation, it has definitely grown to younger generations even more. We learn from technology, but it also tears us down ultimately, because a lot of us compare ourselves to the things we see online, and which is so detrimental, so bad for us, but it happens and it's the truth. When we compare ourselves online, it makes us seem like there's a perfect version of ourselves in the world, and that exists somewhere out there, but in reality we don't know that person, and it's not who we have set ourselves up to be. One thing that I can grow on is wrapping my head around how much technology has impacted our younger generation. One of the things we talked about in class was how was ad control and princesses, and there was a study that asked young girls if they could be a princess, and most of the girls said no because their skin color was too dark. And I think that is ridiculous that these are answers from young girls, because it's just so sad to see how much of an impact technology has on the younger generations, because these young girls are probably 8 to 10 years old, and at 8 to 10 years old, that is not something that I would have said. So technology impact roots from our biggest insecurities as girls, and it starts so early, which we see throughout the rest of our lives. Okay, next is cognitive empathy, and this definition is the ability to intellectually understand another person's thoughts, feelings, and perspective without experiencing those same emotions oneself. It is ultimately taking on a perspective that is not yours. I feel like this is something that I have developed kind of early before taking on this class, because my parents always taught me to be very open and to all views and perspectives, rather than just judging behind one perspective, and judging everyone else because it doesn't align with the perspective that I choose. One development of practice in the future that I can hold as hopefully a registered nurse is that I'll be able to practice self-awareness with biases, actively listen and understand patients' experiences, and learn adapting care to respect beliefs that would lead to better trust ultimately in patients, because oftenly they come from different cultural backgrounds, different perspectives, politicals, and you kind of just have to learn to see another side of things. Some course materials that have helped me grow is the Death and Dying lecture. We talked about how there are different cultures that do different practices when they die, and I think this was really interesting because I've seen it myself. Some of these examples: Dios de los Muertos, Indigenous people, and Japan American families. I think my socialization really benefited me with understanding this, as I grew up in a Japanese culture. So one of the things I saw when my great grandpa died, while we were at his not funeral, but it's more of a celebration of life. We would pass every bone that he had in his body to every one of our family members, and it'd go in a circle, and then finally it'd land in a little dish or this little container where we'd pack up all his bones, and we would end up taking them to our ancestors' grave where everyone is put in our family, and we pass them around with chopsticks. So it's more of a celebration of life again, and there's also temples and cupboards with pictures and food and incense in Japan. And I think being exposed to that kind of culture really early definitely gave me a better sense of understanding of different cultures, and more of an understanding, but variety, where I would see everything. So that is cognitive empathy. Now we're going to cultural humility, which is the thought that other cultures may be doing things better than we are doing. I like to think of it as being open-minded to how we can better ourselves and our environment around us. The development of practice in the future, when I'm in nursing or in the medical field, I'm able to actively listen, know patients' limits, respect patients' cultures, and admit when I don't know something, because oftenly I think I'm right, but actually I'm wrong. Some course materials that helped me grow is the sociology of education lecture, where we talked about the purpose of schools, the differences between manifest and latent. And I think that manifest is a great thing to have in our society, and latent it's harder to understand because it's not explicitly said and it's kind of implied, which is harder to grasp for children. And what I thought before and after, I never really thought about culture humility that much, but I think I know a lot about it since I practice it a lot. When I went to school in Japan, they taught us how to cook, how to clean, taxes, and how to be active and exercise to keep our bodies fueled. And I hope that one day these US schools can integrate them into adopt these practices, because it'll set a great and better future for our younger generations that I think will be super beneficial. So that's one thing that I think. And yeah, thank you very much.